mind, but I'm going to make a start, as I don't want to eat into any more of the conference, and I'd really like you to make the most of a fantastic programme that we've got on offer today. If nobody has said welcome or hello to you, I'm going to have the honour and privilege to give you the biggest welcome. My name's Hannah and I'm the UCAS Student Recruitment Manager at the University of Leicester. So many of the people, hopefully, that work with you throughout the year are some of the fantastic teams that make this conference a possibility. It's our privilege to have our 16th annual Teaching Advisor Conference, and whether it's your first time or you're a repeat offender and you've been here many years, it really is a fantastic opportunity to hopefully do so much networking and sharing best practice. I am going to have to do, unfortunately, some of the boring bits to talk through some housekeeping points. It is important to know that we don't have a scheduled fire alarm today, so if in the instance that a fire alarm does go off, please do follow any of the members of staff that are wearing a blue lanyard. We're all members of staff at the university. We'll take you out to the entrance of this building where there is going to be our located fire area. So please do, obviously, walk with caution, do not take the lift and head down the stairs, but there'll be members of staff to guide you in that direction. It is important to note that every single floor that is a part of the conference today does have accessible and gender neutral toilets, and you will see that there are refillable water stations on each floor for you to be able to use. I can see that many of you are making fantastic use of the reusable. And so please do make sure that you are making the most of the drink stations throughout today. We're really hoping you might get to do a little bit of networking through some of those slots and speaking to members of staff and other delegates as well. There is a prayer room that's available today, so if you do wish to use that, please come down to the help desk to have a conversation with any of the members of the team and we'll be able to direct you to that. That's just to reiterate that the help desk basically is there for you for the entirety of the day. So where you all registered or you passed at the beginning, please do come and speak to quite a few of us. I'm hoping you will wear your lanyards today, primarily so people can identify who you are, but also on the other side, on the back, is your personalised programme. And we've tried to put as much information in there so you know which rooms to head to, but there'll be a wealth of people to be able to guide you as well. There is a buffet-style lunch that is being served on both floors, so please do make the most of that. And there are some rooms for you to sit in, and you'll see that there's a bit of information on the back of your lanyards regarding that as well. I know if you saw me last night, I was banging on about this pre-evaluation form, and I'm going to continue to do so, as you know how important this type of stuff is to continue the excellent work that we do as a team. So please do, if you haven't already, please take a scan of the evaluation form, and I would please ask that you do answer those few questions to really help the future of our conference. It wouldn't be a higher education event or a university event if we weren't encouraging a little bit of active participation. So you'll see this QR code that's on the screen is going to be on the majority of sessions today, just on the bottom right-hand side. And I would ask that you please do engage with the content. So that might be polls or questions, just so that you can really make the most of the sessions that we've got. I really am thrilled that we've got a fantastic programme today, and I hope you are too. A few other pieces of information I wanted to share is there's a really important room change. So this is in the next breakout session after this session. If any of you are in the zero gravity section, that is entitled Making the Most of the Network Advantage, I think it's called on the back of your programmes. That is moving to 0.02, and that is on the ground floor. We're going to have a series of members of staff that are going to be able to direct you, but that's just to let you know we've had a room change as we've had a fantastic amount of interest in that session. It just leaves me to say that we do have an exhibition that's taking place between 11 and 12. There are members of staff from the university and some external providers. I really would like you to make the most of going around and speaking to as many of those people as possible. Inside your delegate packs, there's something called an exhibition passport. And in those little boxes, would really like you, once you've had a conversation, to get them to be able to sign their name or their company's name in the box. If you speak to over 15 people today, please do come and return that to the help desk, and would like to incentivise your participation by being able to enter you into a draw to be able to win a £50 on the high street voucher or £100 of stationery school supplies. That's for you to decide should you be our lucky winner. I'll leave you to decide what that means for you to pick. I really hope you enjoyed today's conference. So much hard work goes into it, and it is only a success by having so many of you here today. So thank you for your continued support throughout the entire year and in joining us today. do make the most of getting to speak and network to some of your colleagues that have come from across the UK today. Without further ado, I'm just going to hand over to our first speaker. Any other questions that you have, don't hesitate to get in touch with us, and have a lovely day.
I just need to make the tech work. Yeah. Should be good.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks to Hannah for the introduction. That little networking thing, I'm going to steal that for the UCAS conference, actually. That's a brilliant idea. So go around and talk to as many people as you can. So I'm Kristel, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for UCAS. So in UCAS, I'm responsible for basically running the cycle, running results day, but also the development of our technology and all of our data as well. So today, really, there's three things that I want to talk to you about. First of all, I want to show you what the cycle looks like last year and this year. We love a bit of data in UCAS, obviously. So we'll show you that data and also how that's going to affect your future challenges in relation to competition in the cycle. I want to show you a little bit about how UCAS is supporting you. Hopefully you know a lot of that, but there's also a lot of new stuff. So last but not least, I want to show you a little bit about the developments that we do. But first and foremost, there's quite a lot going on at the moment, if you hadn't noticed, that really affects your applicants and people, the willingness for people to apply, and also what the university landscape will look like and what choices will look like. So obviously there's a election looming. Anyone going for May? No, probably not, right? So we're probably going to see an election in the autumn as well. So I'm not going to ask you what you're going to vote for. However, how many of you think that there might be a change of government that might be quite substantial? Yeah, I thought so. Anyone that can tell me, let's assume that Labour has a chance of getting in. Anyone that can tell me what Labour's policy is on higher education? That makes two of us then, in that case. So I think it's not just about Labour. The Conservatives and Labour and any of the other parties are completely silent about higher education at the moment, which in the sector makes us a little bit nervous. The only thing we know, if you talk to Conservatives or you talk to Labour, is that there is no money. So, and I think universities are quite worried about that, actually. What we do know, however, I went to the Conservative Party conference as well as the Labour Party conference. What we do know is that there's a lot of talk about skills. So rather than talk about higher education specifically, there's a lot of talk about skills. Skills often equal to apprenticeships. And one of the things that we are developing within UCAS as well is to help to support your students to be able to apply for apprenticeships as well. And there are a few challenges there, so I'll talk about that in a minute. So yeah, a lot of going on externally. And then obviously a lot of talk at the moment, particularly about international students too. Obviously the whole visa route and maybe the UK not being perceived as welcoming as it might have done in the past is going to affect international students. And there's also a lot of chatter at the moment in the press about, say, dodgy practices from universities, as well as competition for international students. I don't think either of those stories are true, by the way, not the way that they are presented in the press anyway. Particularly that international students pushing out domestic students, we cannot see that in our data in any way, shape or form at the moment. I don't know what the future is going to look like. That's a little bit of the context that we are all working within, and I'm sure that your applicants in some way, shape or form will pick up on as well. So what was the story of last year's cycle? Well, actually, in UCAS, I'll talk about the journey to 1 million at the moment. We've said that by 2030, there will be 1 million applicants, whereas now there are 750,000. That will fundamentally affect the competition that basically your students will see over the next years. However, we have been challenged on this because last year, actually, the total number of acceptances went down by 1.5%. UK acceptances were down by almost about 1.5%, and actually 18-year-old acceptances went down by 2%. So we have been challenged on that. So I'm gonna just touch on that in a minute. But also international students, to my my narrative just now that international students are not pushing out domestic students at this moment in time, went down by 3%. So if you look at the East Midlands, this is really interesting because actually the story is a little bit different. So applicants from the East Midlands actually went up by 3.6%. 18-year-olds did go down similar to in the rest of the UK. So that will mean, and I haven't looked at the numbers specifically yet, but that in the East Midlands, there will probably be more mature students that have actually applied. So I think that's really interesting for universities that are local here. And then the entry rates by region. So when we talk about entry rate, it's the percentage of all 18-year-olds that actually successfully got into university. You see quite a big difference across the country. So obviously you see about a 50% entry rate in London, and then there's a big gap with the rest of the UK, particularly Scotland and the Northeast, etc., is only on 30%. And you can sort of guess why that's the case. It could be because of just because of the accessibility of universities. When any of us walk around in London, you see students all the time, you see universities all the time, etc. In the last 10, 15 years, government has particularly invested in teaching and schools in London as well. And a lot of universities now have campuses in London as well. So it's probably a little bit of all of that, but I do think that we need to worry about how that affects particularly WP students in the rest of the UK, that sort of imbalance geographically. And then obviously the cost of living is impacting expectations. What we see from our surveys when we ask students, those either that have been accepted or that decided no longer to pursue their application, is not necessarily that they are worried about going into university, but that they're more worried about what happens when they are there. So more students are now saying, I'm going to have to find a job to be able to make this affordable to me. More students are now saying, I was really looking forward to the social element of university, and now I'm worried about, can I actually afford this or not? I don't know if you see that with your students. Is that the narrative that's playing out? And we saw a little bit in the last cycle, that last minute, obviously we've got decline my place on UCAS, where they now can say, I know I got in, but actually I've changed my mind. That went up a little bit in relation to students that wanted to study somewhere closer to home, i.e. stay at home, basically. Not loads yet, but I think it's a bit of a canary in the coal mine type moment, really. So what does this cycle look like? Well, in October, actually, again, commensurate with last year, we saw that the number of applicants actually went down another almost 2%. So I thought that was really interesting, and I was wondering if it was going to play out on the January deadline as well. But when we look at the January deadline, despite the fact that it went down ever so slightly, actually that October sort of decline didn't play out in January. We did see a slight decline, or we could say a stabilization, but actually the number of 18-year-olds that applied went up by almost 1%. So I personally was a little bit, I shouldn't say disappointed, because we don't necessarily have a target in UCAS on people going to higher education. We absolutely are. It needs to be right for you. However, I was a little bit disappointed. The reason being that when we looked at in the background at our data, there were many more, a significant percentage more applicants that had started an application, had almost completely finished the application, might have even had the reference, but then decided not to press the button to send the application. Now, I don't know if you've seen that in your schools. When I talk to teachers, and I don't know if you've seen that, they tell me, it's anecdotal, we don't have numbers on it, that what they've seen is that this cohort of applicants are a little bit unsure of themselves, are not as confident of themselves, and have therefore last minute decided not to apply. Obviously, those applications still sit in our systems, with the only thing necessary is to press the button for them to be able to apply. I'm not sure that's actually going to happen between now and results day, but it could, you know. The number of applicants that got a place in clearing, or that went direct to clearing actually, has gone up over the years. So it's still possible, but I'm not sure. What I'm being told by teachers, I don't know if you see it, is that is probably not going to happen over the next period. The big decline, again, like last year, that we've seen this year is mature students. And one of the reasons for that is that over COVID, we saw a significant increase, particularly in nursing, because people were looking at the NHS, you know, everybody was clapping on the streets and all that sort of stuff. And people were inspired by that and were actually applying to nursing. And that was mainly a maturer cohort of students. Now, we always say this in UCAS, we talk about mature students when they're 19 or over. So, you know, so there is that, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's not quite mature, but anyway. We saw international applicants go up as well. So I think there's sort of a recovery of international students out of COVID. That's what the subjects look like in this cycle. So STEM subjects are doing quite well. Medicine and dentistry is going down, particularly nursing. I'll show you that specifically in a minute. But also, I hate to say it to you, but you probably got more work to do, because education and teaching is really going down. And you can see it across the country. I'm sure that you see it in your schools, that there's a lot of vacancies out at the moment. I was at my youngest daughter's parents' evening last night, complaining about all the temporary staff that she's getting on a, like supply teachers that she's getting on a continuous basis. But it's a picture across the country, and at the moment it's not getting any better. And then specifically on healthcare, I think government at the moment is quite worried about healthcare. I don't know if you've seen it, but the NHS has launched their workforce plan. So we are doing a lot of work together with them to be able to help them with them, specifically in nursing and midwifery. I never can say that word with my accent, but midwifery, you know what I mean. That's again gone down quite significantly. And that's, I think that's really worried for us as a country, really. So we are doing a lot of work on that. I should have said from the start, often I need to remind people, UCAS is an independent charity. We don't get any government money. We don't get any government, even though we work closely with government, we don't get any, you know, government don't set our targets or anything like that. But we do work very closely with government, particularly on the recruitment of nurses. And then widening participation. So over the last 10 years, what we've seen is that the gap has actually slowly but surely been closing. And we in UCAS have been very positive about that. You can often see UCAS headlines saying, you know, this is the year where most WP applicants have applied, etc., which is great because particularly universities have done a lot of outreach, invested a lot of money on trying to get those from the most disadvantaged areas to apply and to get in through contextual offer making as well, which is all fantastic. But actually, if you look at this picture, we should be slightly worried as a country. Because still, if you apply to a high tariff institution, you're probably about, what is it, 3.5, 4 times more likely to come from a very affluent background rather than from a disadvantaged background. So I think there's much more as a country that we need to do. And that's not just up to universities, clearly, that's up to UCAS, but I think we need to do something that's a little bit bigger as well. I'm not making political statements. We're an independent charity, and I'm not saying anything like that. So. And then, so these are the largest international markets and the changes in demand. Won't surprise you that China is still the biggest sort of contributor to international students in the UK. A lot of universities are now starting to get worried about that because the Chinese economy is not as good as it was. China is investing a lot in their own higher education provision, and a lot of universities have really honed in on that market. So if the bottom were to fall out of that market, that would be a real problem for higher education in the UK. And then there are a few emerging markets. I think Turkey is really interesting, actually. Even though it's low at the moment, we are seeing a lot more Turkish applicants than we have ever seen in the past. And the increase is, well, 37%. That's pretty statistically significant as well. A number of markets that haven't done so well. India, slightly surprising, I think, probably. And Nigeria has completely changed. And I think there's two reasons for that. Both the exchange rate in Nigeria is currently, it's not as easy to afford for Nigerian students. And also, even for undergraduates, that is not that relevant. But the Nigerian postgraduate students not being able to bring their families to the UK anymore is a real problem, particularly for that group of applicants. So you can see that the politics and even just the narrative of people being welcome or not have a big impact on those numbers. So we talk about the journey to 1 million in UCAS. Like I say, currently about 750,000 applicants to higher education in the UK. We think, or we said a few years ago, that could grow to 1 million. Now, there's all kinds of reasons why that won't happen. For example, if the bottom falls out of China, I'm not actually allowed to say China. If the bottom falls out of a big contributor of international students to the UK, the Chinese government doesn't like it when we talk like that. So then, that would be that. Obviously, we don't get to 1 million. So this is what we said in our trajectory. So by 2030, 1 million applicants. So what's driving this? What is more, UK 18-year-olds over the next period. That will taper off by 2030. So we are just projecting beyond 2030 at the moment. But up to 2030, the number of 18-year-olds in the UK is significantly going up. And then international students, we still project that they'll be going up as well. So that'll take us to 997,000. If all of the positive stuff happen, that might even be 1.2 million. If all of the negative stuff happens, that might be as low as about 850,000. But it might be 850,000 or 1.2 million. We didn't think was a good marketing line, so we call it Journey to 1 million. And then this one, I think, is a little bit worrying, I have to be honest. Still, what we are saying is that if the journey to 1 million happens, then still the rest of the UK is going to lag behind. So a lot of that sort of increase and drive will still happen in London. So I really think that if we believe in devolution, if we believe in leveling up, if all those stories are true, then it needs to start with education, right? So, and at the moment that isn't happening. So how good are we at projecting? Well, if you look at them individually, maybe not that good. If you add them up, we are spot on, actually. So we still think that despite the fact that last year we saw a decline, this year we see a little bit of a stabilization, maybe a little bit of decline. We are still on the trajectory for Journey to 1 million. Now, with the best will in the world, if we just get 1 million applicants, so 25% more or less, 25% more, with the best will in the world, universities, as we stand now, would not be able to accommodate that because they would have to build accommodation, labs, get teaching staff, etc., etc. So that will mean that there will be more competition for those places. So obviously the 2030 cohort are the year 7s now, just to remind you. My youngest daughter is in year 8, and I've already told her she better shape up. better shape up, otherwise she won't get in. So how are we trying to support you? Hopefully what you've seen over the last few years is that we've made a real concerted effort to make things better for you and make things better for your students. We've invested a lot of time and money into it, which you might not have seen in previous years. Obviously, we launched a hub. Hopefully, are you using the hub in the classroom at all? Are you using other products like, for example, Unifrog? How many of you use, for example, Unifrog or any of the other platforms? Yeah, most of you. So we believe, our strategy is to make as much as possible available on the hub so that you can really start using it as part of your curriculum in the classroom, etc. So that you don't have to sort of cut and paste what you do on one platform into another platform as well. So, and we've tried to make the hub more personalized, and that's a journey that we are on at the moment. So hopefully your applicants see, if they favor something, that they will see that reflected in the hub as well. Obviously, we had the career quiz, which is really, really popular. Hundreds of thousands of students have done the career quiz. And what you will have seen as well, that now we've added apprenticeships to the hub as well. And then we've done reform over the last few years. If I'm really honest about it, and not for tweeting, obviously a few years ago, the government talked about PQA, post-qualification admissions, or even post-qualifications applications, which would have basically completely changed your cycle, how you can support students. And our feedback was, yes, you can do it, but there are a few real blockages that are going to be a problem. So the government said, okay, let's not do that. However, we want to see reform in the cycle. And that's why we've been working very closely, hopefully with you, but also particularly with universities, to, on a continuous basis, reform and try to make it better. So obviously we launched our new widening participation questions, now heavily used by universities as well, to be able to give your students the support that they need when they actually transition into university. Obviously new references, not liked by everyone. However, it was really necessary, particularly for those that haven't got the type of support that I'm assuming they all get in your schools. And then we've literally just launched the Outreach Connection Service to providers, to universities. And what the Outreach Connection Service is aiming to do is to give you one place where you can see all the support that your students can get to be able to get into university. That's obviously particularly relevant to those from either more disadvantaged backgrounds or that need a little bit more support. And we're launching that live, I think this month, or it might be next month. And then the entry grades tool, hopefully you have already seen it because it has been available to you for a few years, but we're also going to make it available to students now. So basically, a university, what we say to students is, this is a ticket price that the university gives you, but this is what students got into similar courses. It's not specifically that course, but it's sort of a group of courses. So they can sort of see, actually, I can make I wouldn't call it a bit of a punt. I can be a little bit ambitious here if I need to. So, which I think is going to be really useful for students. And then we are preparing for changing the personal statement, not necessarily what you put in it, but put better scaffolding around it. So what's probably going to happen is to split the personal statement into 3 very specific sections so that we really help those applicants to think about what do I need to put in my personal statement. I'm sure it won't be the case in your schools because your students get all the support that they need and want. But for an applicant that doesn't get that sort of support, or for applicants that apply independently, the personal statement is pretty daunting because it's just a free text. Here's a personal statement. There you go. So that's the reason for it. It won't be before the 2026 cycle. So. And then last year, hopefully you've seen it, we did a dates and deadlines consultation. We had a lot of feedback, particularly from universities that struggle a little bit with the amount of applications that they are getting at the moment. If we could change the January date, obviously now it's the last Wednesday in January, and we got 2,000 responses, and basically the gist of it was that you said, no, keep it where it is for now anyway. So, however, we are continuously consulting on things, and what we want to do over the next period is have a real interactive conversation with the sector, with all of you, in relation to what other reform can we put in place, and think about 5 choices. Is that still the right number? The way clearing works, is that still the right way to do it? As well as when should the deadline date be? So if you scan the code, if there's any consultations available, then they will be available on that page. And I'm assuming that the slides get circulated, don't they? Cool. And then we have a number of improvements for the 2025 cycle as well. We've improved the education section to the English language skills. Nationality details were a little bit confusing, is what applicants told us. And also a new section where you live as well. If you haven't seen the changes that we are making, which will go live in May because the 2025 cycle goes on in May, just click on the link when you get the slides. And then you can see the deep dive webinars that we have already done on this. And then apprenticeships. 2 reasons for UCAS really to go into apprenticeships. The biggest one being applicants ask us to. So we get about 1.5 million people register on the hub every single year. Like I say, 750,000 of those decide to apply in the end. About 500,000 of those tell us that they're also interested in an apprenticeship as well. If you compare that 500,000 to the about, I think last cycle it was about 6,000 18 and 19-year-olds that actually get into a degree or a higher apprenticeship, there's still quite a lot of work to do. And then secondly, the second reason that UCAS is getting into this is that if you've ever tried to help your student get into an apprenticeship, it's immensely complicated. There are applicants, and these are not exceptions, but there are applicants that are actually telling me. We had one on a panel when I ran a panel at the Conservative Party conference. We had an apprentice on the panel. She told politicians there that she applied to 50 apprenticeships on 50 different sites. Now that's crazy, you know. We don't want to kingdom build everything into UCAS, but that's just unsustainable, not fair as well. So those are the reasons that UCAS said we really want to get into apprenticeships. Of course, because of who we are, we focus on, even though you see all apprenticeships on the UCAS hub, we really focus on those higher end degree apprenticeships very specifically. So we are trying to help. So at the moment, you can actually see apprenticeships. We always say side by side, which is really not true because they're underneath. But if you Google, if you search on UCAS.com, I don't know, engineering or whatever, you see the undergraduate courses on the top, and then you see all of the apprenticeships underneath as well. You can't apply. You can click the apply button, and then it takes you to either the DFE website or directly to the company website. But we are looking to make it easier for applicants to apply to apprenticeships as well, probably by the end of this calendar year, so by the end of 2024. However, I do want to set expectations. Applying to an apprenticeship won't be as structured as applying to undergraduates, because the problem that we have is companies don't work with our cycle. You know, companies, they get an opportunity, they have a bit of money, or someone leaves or something, and that's the time when they recruit for an apprenticeship. So it will be a little bit different, but we are trying to make it easier. Now, obviously, that will all depend on what happens to the levy. You know, we are getting a little bit of noise, particularly on the Labour side, that they might want to focus on level 2 and 3 rather than on higher end degree apprenticeships. But let's see. It's live now, so it works. We are getting a lot of good feedback from it. It's still in beta format, so we're still improving it on a continuous basis. And then obviously discovery events. Hopefully you go to our exhibitions. We have put a lot of time, money and effort, as well as universities have put a lot of time. Even I started at UCAS about 6 years ago. When I went to my first event, it was all tablecloths, a few board students behind it, and a pile of paper prospectuses. Looks completely different now. And we're also starting to include more apprenticeship suppliers in there as well. So hopefully you've seen that. There's one here on the 6th of June. And then there's one at the National Ice Centre in July in Nottingham as well. But obviously we do them all over the country. We get about 160,000 mainly young people to our events every single year. So it's getting pretty big. And then hopefully, if you are an advisor, hopefully you get our newsletters, you get our emails, you get invitations to our webinars, etc. If you don't, please reach out to us, because that's all. We're trying to support you as much as we can with all of that sort of information as well. And then free webinars, these are the ones that we will be running over the next period. And hopefully they are useful to you. We're trying to make them bigger and better all the time. We actually got our own studio in UCAS, which we invested in over COVID, which has worked really well for us, because now it's quite easy for us to run a webinar, online. So I'll give you a second. Like I say, we will circulate the slide, but if you want to take a photo of this, then please do. So just to summarize, so interesting cycle, because we saw a little bit of a decline last year, a little bit of a stabilization up to now this year. But I'm personally convinced that we will have 1 million applicants by the end of the decade. That is really going to affect competition for your students, particularly those year 7, year 8 students at the moment. So I think setting expectations over the years will probably be useful. And then we are trying to put a lot of time and investment into you as an advisor cohort, and hopefully you've really seen that over the last few years. But if there's anything that you're not happy with, that you think we can improve, we've got advisory boards, we've got consultations, and obviously you can always reach out to our schools team as well. So I've got about 10 minutes for any questions.
Great, thank you very much. A round of applause for Sander on a really fascinating presentation. I'm going to run around like a madman with the microphone if people have got questions. And I think it's the first one over here. So if you could use the microphone, just so we've got some people online as well.
I was just wondering if there's any feedback from the sector about the new references and how this sort of new guidance has been interpreted by schools. I don't know if there's anything you can add on that.
Yeah, so I didn't put a slide in, they didn't put a slide in relation to the consultation that we recently ran to say, how are you finding references? So the feedback, I can't remember the exact numbers, but the feedback is quite positive. What they are saying is that our guidance needs to improve, which we are currently working on. Also, we have worked a lot with universities as well, just to see what they want to get out of it exactly. So that's going to be included in the reference. And when we ran our own Teachers and Advisors Conference, sorry Elliot, but you know, just a little pitch for the UCAS Teachers and Advisors Conference, what teachers and advisors were telling us were that they wanted real examples of how other people are doing it. So we're going to include that as well. I don't know if that's live yet, but that's on our program. But in general, you know, there was a bit of an uproar when we first launched it. All change is difficult, and we probably should have done more about sort of support and examples. But teachers and advisors are telling us heading in the right direction. Just make it clearer and almost more, your guidance more blunt, and that's what we're doing.
Great. Does anyone have any more questions? We've got 7 minutes.
There's one here.
One over here.
On the reply deadline, I know one of the concerns, and we work with a lot of international students, is that students are getting replies on the same day they have IB exams, AP exams, Scottish Higher exams. It's obviously quite tricky if a student wakes up, sees a rejection from university, and then has to go and sit 2 exams that day. I was quite surprised that the deadline wasn't moved earlier, given that's a fairly obvious pastoral thing. I just wonder whether that really is being looked at, because the feedback we have from our students is that, how am I supposed to go and do my exam when I've just not got into my dream university that potentially I've waited 9 months for?
Yeah, I 100% recognize that. And that was one of the reasons that we put before Christmas in as an option. The survey itself was pretty categorical across all of our customer groups, so across universities as well as teachers and advisors, which slightly surprised me as well. However, that for 2025, I can't change that now because we've set that date, but that is part of the open discussion that we are going to have with the sector. What I would just say is that universities should be aware of exam periods and really should not be making offers so close to that period if they can. I appreciate that for a lot of universities it's tricky because of the volume that they are getting. And what definitely should not happen, which is what happened a couple of years ago, is that they leave us to inform the student. Basically, if the university doesn't reply, they just basically sit on it. There could be good reasons for it, but they just sit on it. They don't inform the student. Then a student gets an automated reply from us, basically saying, "Oh, by the way, you've been rejected by your university." That's less than ideal. We've done a lot of work last year to make sure that universities don't do that. But I appreciate that it's still possible. But it's an open discussion.
Great, thank you very much. Does anyone have anything? My steps in today.
Thank you. The UCAS exhibitions, they're really good, and our students like them a lot, but the ones who want to do apprenticeships don't, because there's only like 2 or 3 stands for apprenticeships.
Yeah.
Are there plans to expand that, because there's not really a big apprenticeship fair anywhere local for us?
Yeah, the funny thing is, so first of all, the short answer is yes, absolutely. So we are actively working with employers to get them to the exhibitions, and the ones that are there actually really value it because it's an open conversation. They can show them what they do, etc. The actual problem that we have, which might surprise you, is that universities are much better at doing their marketing in relation to their places than employers are. And when employers look at our exhibitions, they are quite overwhelmed because they are ready with their little table and their paper prospectus, and they go like, I almost said something that I shouldn't say, but wow, like they go like, wow, we hadn't expected this. We are not ready for this. So one of the things that we are trying to do is to help them, not just with ta-da, here's a piece of a whole, but actually with their marketing as well. But we are actively doing work on that. I can't promise you how many will take that up, but it's an active discussion we are having.
Right, probably got time for one more question if anyone would like to ask one?
So universities should be really proud about their exhibitions, actually, because if only Dyson can match you in a hall and the rest of the commercial sector can't, then that's pretty good, isn't it?
Lots of blood, sweat and tears.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
Any final questions other than where's more coffee? Yes, Rob.
Just a quick question about when your next Teachers and Advisors conference is. Was it February this year?
It was, yes. So we do it once a year, basically.
When would the booking open for that?
Pass. I don't know. But if you're on our mailing lists, then we always email you with all the events that are upcoming, and that will be in it as well.
Cool. Thank you.
But of course, the good people, like the good people of, Leicester Uni, will always be inviting us to do stuff like this as well. So, yeah.
The UCAS Roadshow.
The UCAS Roadshow.
Great, thank you very much, Sander. And one final round of applause for that. It's a fantastic presentation. So in terms of from here, there is a bit of a 10-minute shuffle round ahead of your next breakout sessions, or the first breakout sessions for the conference, and they are all on the ground floor. So if you want to kind of head out of here, if you want to grab any tea, coffee refills, there are also there's a station on the first floor, so heading down the stairs that you can